webinar on kind of how to eat out when you are on the go, kind of having a night on the town. Oh, hold on, I almost forgot the bribery peppers. I am here with my murder Muppets. So if you hear a little munching or a little sniffling in the background, my apologies. They have two settings. It's adorable and apocalyptics, and we never quite know which one we're gonna get. So thank you for your patience. In case we haven't met before, I'm Amy. I'm a Monash certified IBS health coach and nutritionist, and I work with women who are tired of worrying about every single thing they eat. I know I can relate. I have IBS myself. I have done the low FODMAP diet, and it is a bummer. So my job as a health coach is to help women build a custom symptom management strategy so that they feel kind of comfortable grabbing coffee with their friends or going for hikes or long walks in the park, or just living a normal life where they don't have to stress about every single thing they eat. Now, today we are talking about eating on the go. And oh, before I forget, actually, I always forget, housekeeping. If you could go to the chat for me, so whether you're on an iPod or iPod, oh, that just aged me. If you're on an iPad or an iPhone, I want you to go to your chat and I want you to switch. It says hosts and panelists. That means only I can see what you comment. If you want to send a secret comment, that's okay. But if you could switch that to everybody, if you feel comfortable, that way, if you have a comment or you have a question, everyone is going to benefit from that. People can respond to you, guys can engage with each other, and I'll be able to see your questions at the end. I do kind of hide the chat because things popping up can be a little bit distracting for my poor little squirrel brain, but I will always check there before we close for the night. So if you have a question, feel free to pop it in there, okay? So tonight we are talking about eating on the go and kind of the different ways that's going to look for you. We're going to talk about kind of grabbing things from the corner store or gas station or the airport, ordering things from a restaurant without having all that stress of kind of what am I going to do? What do I say? And then what to do if you have a FODMAP oopsie. It happens. I'm going to teach you sort of the steps to lower the likelihood that you're going to have symptoms at all. And if you do, we're going to try and keep them as short and sweet as possible. Okay. So let's get started. We're going to talk about snacks first. Okay. So I don't know if you've noticed, if you hang out on Instagram or if you're on Facebook, if there are people that you follow, I know I've talked about this a little bit. It's the migrating motor complex. This is getting its like moment in the spotlight. This is basically the dishwashing cycle that sweeps through your digestive tract after your peristalsis wave. So after your kind of main muscle event, and it kind of just sweeps up all the crumbs. It kind of takes any little errant gut bugs and it kind of just pushes them down to keep everything nice and squeaky clean for you. We talk about this a lot because it can be particularly helpful for people with IBS. It really helps regulate that digestive tract. If you have something like SIBO, small intestinal overgrowth, it'll help kind of flush those bugs back to where they're supposed to be. So it can be really helpful for you. But I'm noticing an uptick in people messaging me on Instagram or talking to me in the Flip Your Leaf community. And there's a lot of, I don't want to say like hyperfixation, but there's a lot of focus on this migrating motor complex where people are sort of leaving the recommended window because our migrating motor complex works when we're fasted. It can only work in a fasted state. If you eat something, it's kind of like opening that dishwasher up, the process is going to stop. And so I'm hearing a lot of people recommending, a lot of people coming to me, having their healthcare team recommending leaving like a 3 to 4 hour window in between when they're eating like breakfast or snacks or something like that to give the migrating motor complex time to kind of come through and do its job. But I want you to know that hunger always, always, always trumps the migrating motor complex, okay? You can still muck up your digestion by leaving your gut hungry. And so it is really, really important that if you are feeling hungry, if that 3 to 4 hour window is too much for you to get sort of from one end to the other, if you need to sort of if you need help kind of balancing your meals, what that looks like, you can always ask me for assistance with that. How do I get sort of from one meal to the other if I don't really have time or a snack doesn't really, it's not really the way that I like to eat? We can always manage that. But if you're finding you're getting hungry, I see this a lot between lunch and dinner because sometimes there's like 4, 5, 6 hours in between lunch and dinner. If you're hungry, Always, always, always eat something. The migrating motor complex is the cherry on top. It is not necessary. It is not the whole meal. You are getting a ton of those cycles while you are sleeping. And so if it's not something that you can manage during the day, or it's causing you stress, or it's leaving you hungry, that is not what it's for. That is not helpful to you. Okay. So first spot, if you're hungry, please, please eat something. Okay. It's really important that you're eating regularly for a couple of reasons. So first of all, our body loves habits. We're going to talk about that a lot today. But your body loves habits, and it's going to sort of regulate itself when it knows, okay, like we usually eat around this time in the morning, and then we kind of have lunch at this time. It's going to space out how it's using your energy. It's going to space out how it's doing sort of the acid and how it's doing bile and enzyme production, because it's expecting you to operate on a system. And so if you're kind of going for long stretches without eating, it can kind of muck up your body's internal process. So it's going to help you regulate bowel movements, sort of eating regularly. It helps you regulate your blood sugar. So you're not getting those like highs and lows, those like sugar crashes in the afternoon. And it's going to help your body stay in rest and digest. Okay. So this rest and digest phase is when we do optimal digestion. This is really where we should be living all the time. And I know in kind of the world we live in, that's a lot to ask right now. But really in all of these sort of master classes and webinars and things, I really do want to kind of drive home that rest and digest is where our bodies are meant to function, is where we are meant to digest our food. And so anything that we can do to get our bodies into that state is going to help us uptake all those nutrients. It's going to help our digestive tract work correctly. And it's going to make sure that we're not getting things like SIBO, for example. Like if you're getting constipated, this can be an indicator that, you know, SIBO is kind of on the way. It can kind of create a perfect storm. And so just by eating on a schedule, just by eating when you're hungry, we can sort of help your body out. Okay. So let's talk snacks. First of all, this is a judgment-free space. You're going to hear some snacks that are not like healthy or clean or whatever. I hate all those words. I am not that kind of health coach. So let's focus on just feeding your body. Okay. And if you have any sort of feelings about the food, just know that then that snack is not for you. Okay. So I have noticed a huge change, at least in like the corner stores and airport around me. So I'm seeing a lot of like fresh fruits and sandwiches and stuff pop up. And so if that is your fancy, you can totally have fresh fruit like oranges and grapes, strawberries, like underripe bananas. There's a whole list. Check your Monash app, like see what's available to you. And if you are hungry, grab some of that. Okay. We want to pair that. So that's like our kind of fiber. We want to make sure that we're pairing that with like a fat or a protein. So you can also do things like nuts or seeds, granola mixtures. You can also throw in some like popcorn or some plain chips. All these things have low FODMAP servings. If you're looking for a protein, we can do protein bars, granola bars. If you want to get into like the snacky part, you're just looking for a little pick me up. You can have lots of different kinds of chocolate bars. If candy is your jam, you're heading out on a flight, you can have so many options like gummy bears and Skittles and Suckers and Smarties and Junior Mints. Like I have a whole list of these things in my free resource library. You have access to that because you are from my newsletter. If you need help getting in there, just shoot me an email and I'm happy to point you in the right direction. But the point is, you can have a ton of everyday products, okay? Now, if using something like FODMAP products, if that's less stressful for you, you are just getting started, you need something that is just certified and you can throw in your bag and just know that it's okay, go for it, okay? I just want you to know that there are other options. You do not have to use expensive, like low FODMAP specialty products. You have a lot of things at your disposal and I'm happy to help you find those things, okay? So, again, your gut can respond really strongly just to being empty, right? Just by going hungry or having a long stretch during the day where you're not eating anything, this can cause bloating, it can cause cramping, it can cause heartburn, none of these things that we want, okay? So one of the ways that I combat this for my clients, for people in my community, is I recommend that you just keep snacks around, right? I spend all day at this desk talking to clients, talking to people in my community, doing things on social media. And sometimes I think like, I'm getting kind of hungry. And then I just kind of fall back into what I'm doing. And so by keeping snacks at my desk, kind of in my drawers, I've got like protein bars, I've got like little candies that I like. I have like little single servings of popcorn that I can just munch. I know I'm sort of making sure that my stomach is not left empty. Like it's just going to continue to create stomach acid. I'm making sure that if my body's hungry, I'm putting something in there until I can finish what I'm doing and go maybe add some protein or fat to that to make sure that it's nice and balanced so that I'm getting kind of benefit from what I'm eating. This also works for your bag or your car, right? So just keeping stuff with you in case you get stuck in traffic or you miss the bus or you didn't realize that you were going to be walking so much and you're starting to get really hungry, or something happened and your dinner is going to be delayed. You have something with you. So again, you're not sitting there hungry because your body's not going to stop making stomach acid just because you're not eating, right? I don't know if you've ever gotten so hungry that you eat something and you're like, oh, like this does not feel good. Sometimes this is an overproduction of acid and you're kind of dropping something in a boiling cauldron. And so we don't want to be leaving these things too late, right? So again, you can grab that list of snacks. It's got lots of different products. It's got candy. It's got like stuff that you can prepare at home and bring with you, or stuff that you can just have at home if that's where you're hanging out during the day. Download it and put it on your phone or print it and keep it in your wallet, so that wherever you are, you kind of know what those options are. They've all been vetted through the Monash app. So having those things in your pocket, I hope that that takes a little bit of stress off of you, trying to find things to eat while you're kind of out in the wild, if that makes sense. Okay. But like I said, always, if you're hungry, please eat something. Okay. Letting your body be really hungry is not helpful to your digestion. It is not helpful to your blood sugar. It is not helpful for your stress. It can flip you into the fight or flight stage because your body's getting all stressed out. It doesn't know when you're going to eat again. So again, our bodies love habits. Our bodies love patterns. The more that you can build confidence in your body, like, you know what, I know that we wake up and we do this one thing and then we eat. And so I'm going to like schedule out our energy expenditure so that we're going to be kind of like running on empty by the time we roll into breakfast. And that's okay because I have faith that we're going to eat food and we're going to be okay. Okay. So that is kind of snacking, airport, gas station, corner store kind of deal. Let's talk about how you eat out. Okay. So this is going to have two kind of parts. One is, how do you eat out like at a friend's house if you've gotten an invitation, and how do you eat out like a restaurant kind of deal or like a takeout kind of deal. Okay. So first of all, I think it's really important that we acknowledge that food and social activity really is a part of being human, right? Our entire society, cultures are built around us meeting for food, right? We have food to celebrate. We have food to commiserate. We have food, right, when we're sad, when we're mourning. So many of our rituals and so many of our habits and so much of just our cultural social network is centered around food. And so I really, really want you to know, if you're just getting started or you're feeling overwhelmed, or you're kind of like looking through the Monash app and you're like, I don't know how this happens. There are lots of things that you can have if you can kind of come down and find that calm place where you can kind of problem solve or you can reach out for help. There are tons of things that you can have. Okay. So let's start with the easy peasy stuff. We'll talk going out for coffee. So your friend calls you, they're like, hey, like, do you want to go out for coffee? Say yes. Okay. You can have coffee, you can have tea, like you can have black tea. There are lots of specialty teas listed in the Monash app. You can have regular milk and regular cream. Like if you're just doing it like coffee style, like that is a-okay. All right. This is not a lactose-free diet. This is a low lactose diet. So like milk and cream in your coffee, a-okay. If you're going to do like an iced latte or something like that, where there's a lot of dairy in there, then I would recommend that you switch to like a lactose-free or a dairy alternative. And again, you can find those dairy alternatives in your Monash app. Okay. So for treats, here is another really important point if you're just getting started. A lot of people get mixed up with gluten and fructans. Okay. So fructans are what are in wheat from a FODMAP perspective. And then we have gluten, which is a protein. Okay. So proteins and carbohydrates. Now, people who have celiac disease or who have non-celiac gluten sensitivity need to avoid gluten at all costs. So like cross-contamination, like hair products, chapsticks, all those things, it is an allergy to wheat, okay? Like celiac disease is not quite an allergy, it's an autoimmune disorder, but the basic thing is that your immune system has tagged this particular protein as dangerous, and your body is overreacting and attacking itself when it comes into contact with gluten. Fructans are something entirely different. Okay, this is a completely different structure in wheat. They just happen to cohabitate in the same places. Okay, so while we recommend gluten-free products on the low FODMAP diet, that is just for convenience. You can have small amounts of wheat. Okay, you can have a regular slice of bread. If you are out at a restaurant, that little bread basket comes, you can totally have a slice of bread. Okay. If you are out at like say a Starbucks, I just went to Starbucks, so all of these examples are Starbucks related. I'm sorry in advance. I know I'm Canadian. It's like the greatest shame that these are not Tim Hortons examples, but here we go. So you can have small servings of wheat. So that might look like a cake pop, right? At Starbucks, you can have a little cake pop, no problem. You can have a regular size chocolate chip cookie. So in the Monash app, it says like a regular standard size cookie. So not like the ones that are like as big as your head. You can have a standard size regular chocolate chip cookie. Okay. You can have a regular serving of shortbread cookies, right? For the Canadians, you could have a Timbit. Okay. If you want something bigger or you have access to kind of specialty places around you, you could do gluten-free croissants or muffins. You could have a big gluten-free cookie. You could do like a banana bread or a lemon loaf. You could have a donut. Like there are lots of options. Like I said, when you can find that place where you have kind of the brain space or the capacity to really look and kind of think it out, or even just reach out to me and I will help you find some stuff. Okay. You tell me what your options are. I will help you find the stuff. Okay. There are lots of options for you to go out for coffee, hang out with your friends, like be spontaneous. That's something that I hear a lot is I've lost my spontaneity. Like, let's say yes. Okay. Let me know. I will help you make it happen. So that is kind of like going out for coffee, tea, a-okay. You can have milk, you can have creamer. If you're doing a latte, then we switch to the dairy-free stuff. You've got gluten-free options. You've got a couple of wheat options. Let's talk about going over to a friend's house. So a friend emails you and says, hey, we're doing like a thing. I know you're doing like a diet thing. Do you want to come? You're like, yeah, I would love to come. The next question out of their mouth is going to be, cool. What can you eat? This is an overwhelming question, especially when you're getting started. So I want you to think first, what kind of foods does this friend normally cook? Are they gourmet or are they gourmet? Like, cool, shoot them a recipe that you like. Here's a thing that I've been wanting to try. You try it, right? Are they, so when I started cooking, like when I started the low FODMAP diet, I could barely boil water, which is weird because now I have a food blog. But I used to call myself like a trying my best kind of cook. And so like, is your friend like a trying their best kind of chef? Then cool, like tell them how to make spaghetti, like keep it simple. But you can just tell them like, hey, cool, like here is how you would make spaghetti for me. I'll see you there. Okay. Like there is, depending on your friend's level of skill, how close you are, like you don't necessarily have to bring your stuff in a Tupperware. Right? I know that that can feel isolating. I know that that can make you feel kind of like weird or other, that you're like continually bringing your own foods to stuff. Sometimes that's necessary. But if you have a friend who's open to this kind of communication, if you can get clear about what you can have, and we're going to keep talking about this, but if you can get clear about what is available to you, lots of people will make this happen for you. Okay. So you can really keep it chill. My best piece of advice would be to either keep your recipes that you enjoy, right? Just have a list of things. Here are all of my recipes that I enjoy making. A friend messages you, said, do you want to come over? Say, cool, here is a recipe that I enjoy and is at your skill level, I think. Let me know if you have questions, right? The second thing is to keep a list of products that work for you. So like I said, you do not have to use like specialty low FODMAP products. There are lots of things that you can use. The trick when you're trying to communicate with other people, or if you have other people in your house who get groceries, is to get really specific. So I just keep like a little list in my cabinet of like products that I use, like the actual brand that I use and the name of the product. So if there's like a particular kind of pasta that I like, or if there's like a particular kind of sauce that I like, it's like brand. Like, so this is the brand that you're looking for, and this is the actual product that you're looking for. And then I usually write down what store you can find it at, right? So if you're going over to a friend's house, it might sound like, hey, like, do you want to come over? Like, sure, what can you eat? I might just say like, hey, you know, I'd really like to have your baked ziti. If you don't know what that is, it's like a little pasta casserole. So I would say like, hey, here's the brand of pasta that I use. Here's the tomato sauce that I can have, and you can grab them both from this store. Right? So it's no big deal if they're like, oh no, I can't get there. Like I can just bring them to you. Like that's fine. We can make it work. So I'd say, this is the brand of pasta I use. This is the tomato sauce I can have. And I would say, would you mind subbing out the onion for like the really green part of a leek? So I've asked them to make 2 product switches, which they would have to go and buy anyways. And I've asked them to make 1 substitution. Now in a baked ziti, there's like sour cream and there's cheese. And so I'm going to take a lactate pill before I go to help me break down the lactose. But other than that, it's 3 changes, right? You can keep it really simple. You can keep it like not open-ended, like really close-ended and specific. But there are lots of ways to help people feed you that don't feel overwhelming or don't leave you feeling like a burden. There are lots of ways to make this work, okay? So let's talk about eating out at restaurants, because I know that this can be a little bit nerve-wracking for people. I know it was for me when I got started at first. So let's back up. If you are using the Monash app, right? So you do not have somebody supporting you, you have not had the program customized. I need you to remember that that is the most restrictive the program can possibly be. Okay, so there are lots of different ways that FODMAPs impact our body. Some are very specific. They pull in a lot of water. Some are highly fermentable, so they generate a ton of gas and fermentation in the gut. And some are kind of in between, but most kind of lean to one side or the other. So the program is really meant to be tailored to you, right? Like, what are your personal symptoms? What do they look like? How fast do they come on? Like, what does your lifestyle look like? Do you need to eat out a lot? Are you constantly traveling? Do you eat at work? Sort of what is available to you? Like, I know my husband eats a lot of catering services when he's doing shows. And so like, it should really be taking in your whole life and your whole person and kind of how you operate to make sure that it is as I'm like losing the words. I want to say like as least restrictive as possible. That's not how you English, but you know what I mean. It should not be restrictive, okay? It should be as open as possible. There we go. So when you are talking to whoever puts you on this program, I want you to, if they didn't give you specific instructions, go back and say, hey, here are my symptoms. What are the high ticket items that I need to be aware of? Right? Because when you go to a restaurant, you don't need to cut out everything. It is so rare that a person responds to every single food in the Monash app. Like, usually we're just doing FODMAPs because there's some other issue and we happen to know that FODMAPs can be helpful for this. So like for SIBO, for example, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, your body's kind of responding to everything. And so we just kind of lower it as much as we need to for your symptoms to kind of like chill so you can be a little bit more comfortable while you're doing your treatment. I know they're looking into it for like endometriosis while people are waiting for treatment. So it's going to vary based on what's happening in your body. But you should have like a list of like, if you go to a restaurant, here are the 5 things that I want you to avoid instead of like the 100 things that are in the app, if that makes sense. Okay. So if you are having like extreme diarrhea, like it's very urgent, we want to make sure that we're really managing the water pulling foods. If on the other hand, you have a lot of constipation, or you're getting a lot of bloating, or you're getting a lot of pain, we want to make sure that we're really looking at the most fermentable foods, right? And so in that case, like having water pulling foods might actually be helpful to you. And so we don't really want to be pulling them out of the diet. So again, if your healthcare team didn't give you like a top 5, where like if you can only cut out a couple of things and make sure it's these ones, go back and ask them for what that would look like, okay? Because this is going to open up a ton of opportunities for you. So assuming that you kind of know, or you have a list of like, these are the things that like are hard nosed, these are the kind of things that like would be nice to avoid. What are we going to do when it's time to go to a restaurant? Well, first we sleuth, okay? So I want you to sit down when you're not going anywhere. Okay, so there's no pressure. You can do it in your jammies. You can be watching Bridgerton, like, I don't know. And I want you to look up the places that you like to go to. Okay, so that's like coffee shops, lunch places, dinner places, takeout places. Like, where do you go regularly? And I don't necessarily mean special occasions. I'm talking about like, how do you run your life? Because your elimination phase should only be 2 to 6 weeks. What are the odds that you're going to go to like a fancy $400 steak dinner? I mean, it could be good. If it is, you can sit down and work that out. But where do you actually go in the next 2 to 6 weeks? And I want you to go and look up the menu and see if there's anything that's naturally low FODMAP, first of all, where like you wouldn't even have to tell the server anything. So that's something like a gluten-free sandwich. You could do like a gluten-free hamburger, or some people do like a hamburger wrapped in lettuce. That's like gluten-free pasta nachos, like you can get chicken wings. If there's nothing that kind of looks obviously low FODMAP that you would be good with, then we go to the made to order thing. So that's like I order and the kitchen is making it from scratch just for me. Because these are always the easiest to modify, because, you know, it's not like it's sitting in a pot and somebody's going to have to fish out all the onions or whatever. So again, if there's nothing that's naturally low FODMAP, then I'm looking for things that are made to order. Now, if there's something specific that you want, or you're going to a restaurant and you can't find anything, right? You're like, I've been invited to this Italian restaurant and I can't find anything that's going to work for me and I'm really freaking out. Call ahead, okay? Pick a time that is kind of like off season, like, I don't know, it's like off hours at whatever restaurant you need to go to. You can call or email them and say like, hey, here's the sitch, right? I need to avoid these 4 specific foods. I'm looking at your menu. I don't see anything. Do you have a suggestion, right? Because who's going to know better than the chef if something can be modified for you, right? And if they're like, ooh, like nothing kind of works, if it is a restaurant that accepts like accommodations or modifications, you can ask them if you can make a reservation and have something made specifically for you. We had this happen once. We were going to a Greek restaurant. I think it was somebody's birthday, and they marinated all of their meat the day before. And so like I talked to the manager and he said like, hey, don't worry. Like if you know you're coming here, like we marinate it for 24 hours. If you give us like 48 hours notice, we're just going to leave one aside from you and we'll like salt and pepper it, like oregano, whatever. It'll still be delicious. But like, just let us know and we just won't put that one thing in the marinade for the day. So restaurants are pretty accommodating when it comes to things like this. And like FODMAPs are getting more and more popular. And so people aren't giving you quite as much side eye when you go and say, I can't have any onions. It's important to remember that like restaurants want your business, right? If they're the only restaurant locally that you can eat at with all your friends, they want to help you, right? It benefits you and it benefits them. So again, if you're looking through the menu, we want things that are naturally low FODMAP. We want things that are made to order so they can be easily modified. If you don't see anything, just call and ask, okay? But what I want you to do is I want you to create a list of places that work for you, right? So like when someone asks you to go out, if you're at work and you're hungry, if there's like a spontaneous thing and you're going out to do it, I want you to have a list of places in your pocket that work for you, okay? And I do have a list of like different types and styles of restaurants in the free library. So it's like, what would you order at like an Italian restaurant? What would you order at a Greek restaurant or Japanese restaurant or like a Mexican restaurant? What are your easy options that you can usually find in most of these places? And this can be helpful if you get stuck in a situation where you kind of don't know what's around, right? Like I started the Low FODMAP diet. I was really new to Toronto. And I'd go out with my friends and they'd be like, cool, like you can pick the place we go. But I didn't know any of the places. Like I'd never been to any of them before. And I found that it was much easier to say like, hey, I can always find something in a pub. Or do you know anywhere that has good sushi? Or, you know, sort of giving people these buckets where like, I don't actually know any of these restaurants. Like, do you know anywhere we can get a gluten-free pizza? It kind of helps me feel less singled out, because everyone is still involved in the decision about where we're going, right? It's like, cool, like you have this weird thing, you go first. And I'm like, cool, I want pubs. Where are the pubs? And then everyone can decide still as a group where we're going to go. People can talk about foods that they enjoy or like particular restaurants that they enjoy. And we can still sort of do this together as a collective. I don't feel weird. I don't feel singled out. People can still get food that they enjoy, even though they're technically accommodating me. Having this list can really be a lifesaver and take so much stress off of you, because you know, anytime I'm invited out, I'm just going to whip out my list and here are either the buckets or the actual restaurants that are helpful to me. Okay, so again, grab that list in my free resource library. It's called, I think it's like the restaurant guide. I think it's the restaurant guide. If you can't find it, just shoot me an email and I'll make sure that I connect you with it. Okay, so let's talk about how you actually order food. Okay, because I know that this kind of makes people a little bit nervous. Like, how do I actually say this? Like, I need a lot of things. Like, I don't want to kind of like feel weird or have like the server give me side eye. So rule number one is please do not lie. Okay, people lie all the time and say that their sensitivities or allergies. And then your server's not going to take you seriously if you say you're allergic to onions, but then you're like cool with dressings or condiments, right? Like ketchup has onion and garlic in it, for example. And so sometimes people will like alert you like, hey, oh no, that dressing has onion in it. You're like, oh, that's okay. Right now, when you come back and you need something else and you really do need the onions or you really do need the garlic gone, it's less likely that the person's going to believe you. It's also not fair to people who do have allergies, who may not be taken seriously by servers who are getting used to people kind of lying to them when it comes to food sensitivities. Okay, so it's kind of like a hot topic. Some people say lie, some people say don't lie. The way that I normally phrase it when I'm talking to servers, and I've had a lot of success with this, is I normally say like, hey, I have a food sensitivity. That means if I eat too much of this trigger food, like I'm not going to die, but by 3 a.m. I might wish that I had. right? It's a really specific and a little bit graphic statement, but I find that it really does let me be in control of my meal, even if some of the pieces are inconsistent, because I've been really clear, I can't eat too much of this, but like if you come, like I had a server one time like run out and be like, oh no, like the salad dressing has onion in it. And the conversation turned from this is an allergy, you can't have this. And I'm like, oh, like, do I like out myself and say like, oh, I'm not allergic or I can have a little bit? Like it becomes a conversation where I can say, like that feels okay. Or thanks for letting me know. Is there another option, right? So now I'm getting control of my meal, even if certain parts are okay and certain parts are not okay for me. It also really lets me connect on the server with the server, like on a human level, because nobody wants to poop their pants in the middle of a restaurant, right? Like, no, it's not an allergy, but like, why would you do that to me in public? Like, are you that kind of person, right? So it really does help me connect with the server. And then that helps them understand this is really serious for me, even if it's not an allergy, right? And so sometimes there are places that are a little bit sketchy about making accommodations if it's not an allergy. Honestly, most people have just let me like, cool, I won't put it in as an allergy, but like I'll tell the kitchen really clearly that like this needs to be accommodated for you. So again, lying just creates a web of horribleness. If I'm being really direct, saying like, hey, again, like at 3 a.m. I may wish that I had died, really does help clarify things for the server. And then we're working as a team as opposed to them wondering if I lied to them or not, if that makes sense, okay? So again, you want to make the list of things that you need modified or accommodated for at home, like stress-free. You can have time to like look things up. You can look up things on like Google if you want to check something on Manish's website. If you want to shoot me an email or like a DM on Instagram, like you have time to figure it out without everybody kind of waiting for you. You also don't have to remember it. So like if you have a couple of weird things, like if your dietitian has said, like, I really need you to not eat mushrooms, like you have time to remember that. Or if you forgot, you can add it to the list. Another thing is that you can actually hand the list to the server. So like if you put it on a cue card or like on the back of a business card or on a Post-it, you can just hand it to the server and they can hand it to the kitchen to avoid any confusion, okay? Now, I've had this happen a couple of times. If your Post-it is like, or like if your like list is like 3 Post-its long, right? Or like making this list is really stressing you out, aim for the heavy hitters, right? So if your dietitian has told you like, hey, you really need to steer clear of water pulling things until we figure this out. Here are like the 3 or 4 things I really want you to avoid if possible. Or if you are having a lot of like bloating and pain, here are like the highest fermentable things that I really want you to avoid if at all possible. If you don't have a team right now that is supporting you in that way, the heaviest hitters are usually wheat, onion, and garlic. And by heaviest hitter, I mean, if you are sensitive to that group, these are the 3 foods that are really going to stress out your gut. Okay, so if all you can avoid is wheat, onion, and garlic, you are doing like as well as possible, okay? And then of course, anything that you know for sure doesn't work for your body. So like if you have a legitimate allergy, please put that on your list. If you have a food that you like know for sure this does not agree with me, whether that's for IBS or something else like GERD or dyspepsia, put that on your list as well. It is not exclusive to wheat, onion, and garlic. Like trust your body. Now, what happens if you get a FODMAP oopsie? It's gonna happen like, first of all, if you have an oopsie, it does not wreck your elimination phase. I know that that's something that stresses a lot of people out. Like if I have an oopsie, do I have to start again? Absolutely not. If you do happen to get an oopsie and have symptoms, like just write them down. That's like a quasi test. It's just information, right? I know it doesn't feel good when it's happening in your body, but like this is still valuable information that we can use later. Okay. The other thing is this is a low FODMAP diet, not a no FODMAP diet. Okay, so like I said, this should be as open and free as possible. We should only be cutting out what is absolutely necessary to get your symptoms stable enough, like not even gone. We're not going for perfection. We're going for level enough that if I handed you something that you were sensitive to and you ate it, you would see a change and go, oh, like, yeah, that food definitely created a response in my body. I'm going to mark that down, right? So like we say, like if it's like upwards of like 50% better, great, we're ready for testing, okay? So this is low FODMAP, not no FODMAP. Well, there are no cheat days because that's gonna sort of muck up the containers for your testing. If you get oopsied, just go back to the low FODMAP diet, okay? You might, if you're like really close to getting into the re-challenge phase, you might have to stay there for a little while longer. But if you're like still in the beginning phases, you haven't wrecked anything, I promise, okay? So what happens if like your server didn't hear you or there was kind of like a mix up in the kitchen? The first thing that you need to know is that when we experience a stressful situation, like finding a half-eaten onion in our pasta, your body is going to shift into fight or flight. Okay, this is a natural thing. It happens to everybody. Like, don't panic. Okay, so what happens? Like, so we talk a lot. Okay, we talk a lot about fight or flight. We don't actually talk about what it means. So let's back up 1 second. Okay, so when you're in fight or flight, your body's going to shift into the sympathetic nervous system. Okay, so we have the sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight, and we have the parasympathetic nervous system, rest and digest. And they work like a light switch where only one can be on at a time. Okay, so you find a half-eaten onion, right? And your body's like, oh crap, right? Sympathetic nervous system flips on. It's going to pause non-essential processes like digestion, okay? Because this sympathetic nervous system is meant to respond to danger, right? We are actively looking for bears, okay? Our body does not understand the difference between like onion danger and bear danger. And so it is like pulling all of our blood and all of our spirit energy into our brain and our muscles so that we can like think really fast. We've got really great reflexes. If you need to run really fast, if you need to jump really high, your body is trying to make that accessible to you, right? And so it's shutting down processes like digestion because those are not used for like life-saving purposes, okay? Now, here are a couple of things that I want you to know from like a scientific perspective so that you can repeat themselves to yourself if you feel these things happening in your body, okay? So we're in fight or flight, and you feel your heart rate begin to increase. This can be really anxiety provoking in and of itself for some people. And so if you feel your heart rate start to increase, I want you to tell yourself, oh, okay, my body sensed danger, and it's increasing my heart rate in order to bring oxygen to my muscles, right? So we can do all of the magic things. You might notice that your breathing is starting to increase, right? You're getting those shallow breaths. I want you to think to yourself, oh, okay, my body senses danger. And so it's making me breathe really quickly and really shallow so it can bring more oxygen to my blood. So my blood can bring more oxygen to my muscles, right? So it can do all the magic things. You might notice that your body starts to sweat, right? Or you get those kind of like goosebumps. Your body is trying to regulate your temperature so you can do activities longer, like fight off a bear or run really fast, okay? So sort of repeating these things to yourself as like, these make sense. My body is sensing danger. It is doing these things to protect me from bears. These are not necessarily signs that my symptoms are coming, okay? Because our brain likes habits, right? We talked about this. Our brain makes shortcuts and automations for absolutely everything it can. And sometimes with people who have IBS or who have gut issues, our brain starts to connect the symptoms of actual anxiety or fear, or our body preparing to fight off some sort of danger. It links that to our IBS symptoms, right? And so now just feeling anxiety in your body can trigger your symptoms. Okay, so it's really important that we begin to separate these things sort of in our brains, like, hey, I'm having these things. This has no bearing on whether or not I'm going to have symptoms. Okay, so like I found a piece of onion in my thing. I'm having these symptoms of anxiety. These are separate from having gut issues. I don't know if I'm going to have a gut issue yet. Okay. Now, another important thing about when your body is flipping into this fight or flight is that your gut muscles are going to slow down. So you can still eat while you're in fight or flight. The problem is your gut is starting to go really, really slow. It's mucking up your gut transit time. So while your body is slowing down, it's also going to slow down the release of bile and enzyme. These are the things that break down our food so we can actually absorb it into our body. So now, even if you had the perfect meal, like a machine spat out the perfect meal for your body, you don't have the right amount of bile, you don't have the right amount of enzymes, your body is not going at the correct speed, you will not be able to sort of pull out as much nutrition as you could if you were in rest and digest. Now, another problem here is that because our body's going so slowly, when you're eating foods that are fermentable, they're going to get caught in your digestive system. They kind of get parked there, or they go so slowly, it's almost like they're in a traffic jam. This is going to give your gut bugs good, or I hate the word bad, just helpful or not helpful. Helpful or less helpful. This is going to give the gut bugs more time to ferment your food than they would normally have. So something that might have just gone through your digestive system and not caused a problem, now because we're stressed out and we're anxious, our gut is slowing down and it's having more time to ferment, which is like, it's going to cause like bloating, can cause distension, pain, cramping, like none of these things we want. Okay. Now, the other side of this is that some foods, like I said, pull in a bunch of water and they continue to do that until they're either absorbed or they kind of like exit the system. And so if we're parking these foods in our bowel, all of this water is being continually pulled into our gut. And this is where we get things like urgent diarrhea. Okay, so we see how these two sort of like sides of the coin are both caused by this feeling of fight or flight in our body. Okay, so what are we going to do? Again, you're eating your dinner and you kind of spot this half-eaten onion and your body's like, oh no, and it flips you into fight or flight. Okay, so now when your symptoms hit, are they from the onion or are they because you were in fight or flight? Right now you have no way of knowing. This is one of the reasons why we say if you're having a super stressful day, you're not getting enough sleep, all of these things, that is not a great day to test a FODMAP food, because again, we're not going to know if this is your fight or flight response or if this is the actual food that you've eaten, okay? And like if you're in a situation where you're at a restaurant and you eat something and you have this like big exaggerated response because on top of having the food trigger, you also had this anxiety response, you may end up walking away being really afraid to eat onions, right? Because you had this big exaggerated response when it could have had nothing to do with those, right? And now food is missing from your diet and all of the products that are associated with that are missing from your diet because you had an anxiety response and your brain mistook it for an onion, if that makes sense, okay? So something is weird with your meal. First thing I want you to do is I want you to take 3 to 6 deep breaths and focus on the exhale. I don't care so much about the inhale, okay? So 3 to 6 deep breaths. And the reason we're doing this, remember, is because we want to take breaths that are like solid, not those shallow anxiety-driven breaths, because we're trying to send our body a new cue, okay? I am not in danger. I am okay. You are missing now one of the cues that we are in a dangerous situation because I'm intentionally slowing down my breathing. Now, if you're focusing on the exhale, getting a nice good exhale going, this is actually going to slow down your heart rate. So now we're missing 2 cues that this situation is dangerous. And sometimes this is enough to flip your body back into rest and digest all on its own. If that's not quite enough, I want you to tell yourself, bless this mess. Say it out loud, say it under your breath, say it in your head. Like the louder you can do it, the better. Bless this mess and commit to enjoying your meal. Sounds super weird, right? Pull out the onions you can see and say, I am just going to dig in and enjoy this to death, because the more you can engage in the present moment, the more you can engage with the people who are around you, the more you can really enjoy that meal, the more likely it is that you are going to stay calm and you are going to stay in that rest and digest stage. Your body is going to continue to move things through normally, so you're not getting that traffic jam. Your gut bugs are not getting extra time to ferment that food. Your body's not having extra time to pull in water to your gut. Like the calmer you can stay, the lower the reaction will be to FODMAPs. Because if you're going to respond to a FODMAP, you will respond whether you worry about it or not, right? So we're kind of taking that second arrow of harm. We're like, okay, there was an external cue or trigger and that kind of got me, but then I had this big anxiety response and that got me again, and then I'm responding to both. Like again, we can lower the amount of symptoms that you're going to be having in your body just by staying calm, really staying present in the moment, and really enjoying your food, okay? So today we talked about grabbing snacks from your corner store or like the airport or the gas station. We talked about going out to friends' houses, grabbing coffee, ordering at restaurants. And we talked a bit about what to do if you get kind of a FODMAP oopsie. Now, if you are feeling sick of feeling like a science experiment, come and work with me. I will look at you as a whole person, and together we're going to create a symptom management plan that feels so normal you are going to forget that you are doing it. So like no more staying home just in case, no more worrying all the time, and no more worrying about every single thing you eat, okay? So if you want to learn more about my one-on-one program, I will drop a link in here for you. That's just a link to like pop yourself into my calendar. It is so much fun. We are going to learn sort of like what is like ideal health for you, because it's different for everybody. We're going to learn sort of like what is the obstacle right now for you that is standing in your way, and what is like the fastest way to get you to where you want to be, right? Whether that's working with me, whether that's me connecting you with someone else, I am absolutely happy to help. I had a great time talking with you guys tonight. I don't see any questions in the chat. If you think of anything afterwards, just shoot me an email. I'm happy to help. But I hope you guys have a great night, okay? I'll see you later.